What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gaming Without Parole. Sitting across from me this week is Dezrah.
Hello. And sitting across from me is Brian Paul.
As always. I'm always here.
Usually.
Also known as every time. This is my bedroom.
Yeah.
Welcome to my bedroom. Des, you brought up a topic to me this week.
I did.
You said that, how did this all come about? Why don't you explain to everybody out there why we're doing what we're doing?
Well, recently the Internet Archive, some of the coolest people on the Internet, there are very few straight-up good guys on the Internet, but the Internet Archive are definitely among them. Mm-hmm. But one of the things they just did was release around 2,000, I think actually it was 2,300 MS-DOS games playable in your browser. Now, they've been an archive of a lot of kind of abandonware in the past, but you've always had to download them yourself and then get a DOS emulator and do all this, hardcore techie stuff to get them to work. But now, they've actually made it so you can play all these games in the browser. So you just go to the internetarchive.org and they'll link
thousands.
Somewhere. Yeah, and there's thousands of games. You just click on the title you want to play and let it load up in your browser and go ahead and play.
Yeah.
It's pretty exciting. So once I had seen that, I was like, oh, Brian, we should talk about some old DOS games because, I did have, I had an Atari, then I had Super Nintendo, but then from then on, I was pretty much a PC player until about the GameCube, actually. No, I had Super Nintendo. I did have Super Nintendo, but... So this is definitely, my wheelhouse, and a lot of my childhood actually was in PC games.
Certainly a trip down memory lane.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was a PC kid, well, Commodore 64.
Okay.
And then PC. And then I think I got a Sega Genesis at some point, and from that point on, I was about as much of a console kid as you could possibly imagine. I never really went back to PC games.
But we accept him anyways.
We do. So when I was looking at this list, I expected to be like, I'm not going to know any of this because it's going to be all the stuff that I was into is too long ago.
Yeah.
But it was actually kind of perfect.
It's exactly there. Yeah.
Right? When I'm looking down at the list, I saw a ton of games that, well, ASCII-based games.
Yeah.
There must have been at least 2,000 ASCII-based games.
Oh, yeah.
Like Kraz, with Kingdom of Kraz. Just all these games that I used to play when I was APOG actually made all these ASCII games before they made games like Commander Keen and the old 2D Duke Nukem.
Right. Which was actually, that was one of the games I went and tried, was Commander Keen. I was like, oh man, I used to play these like crazy, and it was not working well.
It was not working well.
Yeah, it was. The control scheme was either weird, or I don't know if the emulator, like the speed was all messed up, but it was very hard to control, a lot harder than I remember it being. Of course, I was 12 last time I played it, so that could be part of it too.
So Commander Keen was interesting because I remember when my friends were all playing like Super Mario Brothers 1, 2, 3 on the Nintendo. I didn't have a console, so Commander Keen was sort of all I had that was close to it.
Yep. That
and like Jumpman and sort of things like that. But it wasn't until I think Commander Keen 4 where like it really felt like a console game. There was like really smooth scrolling and smooth jumping, and everything just had the right amount of floatiness to it. It felt really, really good. And I remember that just being like, I was like, I don't need a Super Nintendo because I have Commander Keen 4.
Yeah. Did you try that on the emulator?
I did not try it on the emulator.
Yeah.
But since you did bring it up, I ran into a snag almost right off the bat.
Okay.
Myself, because I wanted to play a game that I'm really fond of, and it was Prophecy 1 Viking Child.
Okay.
Now, I've played this on the Atari Lynx. I reviewed it on this channel for the Game Boy.
Okay.
It's made its way around a lot of different consoles.
It's been around.
But the PC version was the one that I originally played as a kid, and it was, it was awesome. It was sort of a Wonder Boy and Monster World sort of ripoff.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so quality.
Yeah.
This thing ran ridiculously fast.
Oh.
Yeah, and the problem is time is part of the equation here.
Okay.
After a certain amount of time, you lose one of your pieces of your life bar. And so the game was totally playable in fast speed, but you would die way too quickly.
Right.
So that was a real shame. And I understand that, there are thousands of titles here. So there's no way that anyone can go through one by one to make sure they're all running perfectly. And
I even read an interview with the I can't remember his name, but the programmer who's basically responsible for trying to make all this work.
Yeah.
And he really does say, is like, look, I've done the best I can. but you're going to find a lot of these that aren't going to work because, no human has the time to go through 2,300 titles and recode these old DOS games to make sure they're compatible with your browser.
Yeah.
One of the funny ones I ran into, and one, I guess, recurring theme of a lot of these old games was the paranoia about piracy. Okay. I mean, you think it's bad now. A lot of the titles I ran into was just like, remember, you got to pay for this version, or no pirates.
Mm-hmm.
And there was actually a Star Trek game. Oh my goodness, I didn't write down the actual title of the Star. But anyways, it was one of the Star Trek games where you loaded up. It was a text-based one.
Mm-hmm.
You started like your first thing. Sulu says whatever, and then all of a sudden it says, "Oh, Captain, all of our star maps are corrupted. Please insert a disk into drive A." And, well, I didn't have drive A, so I just kind of hit the space bar to advance to the next line.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, it goes to a black screen.
Yep.
You have died. You've been transported to this other place that, it's only for, like, pirates and other...
only for pirates.
Yeah, and basically, like, you die in the game because you didn't have the actual disc.
Yep. Because they're actually calling you a pirate.
Pretty much, yeah. And that happened with a couple of games that I tried.
That definitely happened with me on one of my favorite Sierra games. Actually, I'm going to just jump right out there and say my favorite Sierra adventure game of all time is the first Laura Bow game, Colonel's Bequest.
Okay.
Which is just an amazing game. I'm going to put some footage up here so you can see what I'm talking about.
That does look good.
Right? It's very it's very 19, I don't know, I'm just to throw a random year out there, 1920s, 1930s.
Okay.
New Orleans kind of it's you're in this big estate. You get called there by, I think, your grandfather, and you're meeting all these family members who are all like they all seem money hungry, and they all have like a devious side to them.
Okay.
And your like grandfather came there to say that he's going to split his inheritance among all the survivors of the family, and they're all staying in this big mansion for the next day, I think, or two.
All the survivors.
Oh. So people start dying one by one, and it's like this big open-ended game where you can actually just kind of wander around and let the game happen, or you can start solving mysteries because the game will progress time-wise no matter what. And people will show up dead, but you may be able to see their murder if you're in the right place at the right time. You can sneak behind walls and look through eyes and paintings and stuff, and it's just an amazing game. And it's one of the games that Sierra made that had a darker tone. They didn't have a lot of those. A lot of them were cartoon style.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about kind of
the point of that was the copy protection. Sierra was known to say at the beginning of the game, like, what's the fifth word on the seventh page of the second paragraph in the manual, and you're like, I don't know. Right? And so certain games like this would actually let you start playing, and then there'd just be like this block where you could never get further, to make you think you could play, and then you're just screwed.
The good news is, and I came into this problem in one of my games, what we have now that you didn't back then is the internet.
Yeah.
So there are a lot
problem solved. Really.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of resources, and I found you had to judge games on two different things. One, is this a good game just playing it in the browser?
Yep.
Or two, is it a good game if I have access to other resources?
Yeah.
Like one of the games I actually ended up playing for the first time with this and liked it so much, I'm actually going to return. I want to finish this game. Is Return to Zork.
Oh, one of the ASCII games.
Zork.
Text-based.
Zork is a text-based game. But Return to Zork is one of the later games. It was the last one on Infocom before the Zork rights went to, I don't remember who, but somebody else. It's very much like Myst, actually.
Come on.
No, it's photos. It's photorealistic scenes. You can click on and interact with objects in the screen. Came out in 1993, about 3 months before Myst.
Really?
I don't know why. Like, I'd never heard of this, and I like Zork. I've got a little bit of street cred. Never even heard of this thing, and it's got not only it actually beats Myst in a few ways. It has video acting of actual actors. Captured for the game. It's unlike Zork, where you only have like a few options you can do with each item. You actually can right click, and it shows, like, say you're holding a knife, and you put the knife on a stone. you right click on that, and it shows you like, do you want to throw this at the stone? Do you want to cut the stone with it?
Oh, wow.
Do you want it has all these options there, and it's really neat. And just like the Zork games, it has this nice mix of humor to sudden death without realizing what happened.
Wow.
It's like all of a sudden, you're going along, all of a sudden, boom, you just died. And so you have to go, and what actually they say doesn't work in the browser, but I found does, you can actually set up save states.
Really?
So as long as you have this browser window open, you can save your game and reload it. So it was a blast. It was kind of revisiting the same sort of humor and story as the Zork series, but in this visual thing, and it was great.
I'm blown away.
Yeah.
I can't believe that this game got by me.
Yeah, and and the point being, the reason I brought this one up is there is one of those situations where there is a school teacher who asks you this question, and without spoiling it, it's like if you answer it wrong 3 times, you die.
Okay.
But the way to find the answer was there was an encyclopedia that was included with the actual game.
Yeah.
The good news is the internet has come to our rescue, and that's the 10th time I've hit that mic stand. The internet has come to our rescue, and you can get all of the extra feelies, they call them. You can get those on the web and find all the answers.
I miss feelies.
Yeah.
I remember when we used to go to Babbage's and Electronics Boutique, and long before GameStop existed, Funcoland, I guess. And when we were buying PC games, I remember, like, my brother, my dad, and I, we'd all be there, and we'd be like, should we get this game or this game? And we'd be like, which one passes the weight test? And I remember buying The Adventures of Willie Beamish by Dynamics, and it was there was so much stuff just like packed into that box, and it was kind of useless, but you felt like you were getting your money's worth.
Right.
Now you buy a $60 PlayStation 4 game, and there's not even a manual when you open the case.
Well, but even back then, it was like this game, or you buy this game that has 3 floppies inside. Well, that's not very exciting either.
Exactly.
Well, some things never change.
I want to stick on the adventure game genre for a second, because I talked about Sierra and how a lot of their games, there's like a lot of Space Quest and King's Quest, and they all maintained a bit of a cartoony style. Mm-hmm. I think the only ones, especially the earlier ones, that ever branched out were the Police Quest games that took a much harder edge, and graphically the first ones looked a lot like King's Quest or Space Quest,
right.
but they took a more serious tone. Okay. LucasArts, which was my favorite, always had the cartoon look.
Yeah. That was... Yeah.
And it got cartoonier as the years went by. But there was a company called ASCII Software, and they were probably most famous for their Lynx games, which were all golf games.
Okay.
And
right. Lynx,
digitized actors and digitized trees, and you'd have to kind of like wait for the golf course to be built in front of you every time you took a shot. But they made a few graphic adventure games, point and click games. Mean Streets, Crime Wave, those were 2 big ones. But Countdown is the one I played today.
Okay.
Now, my brother bought this game when I was a kid, and I remember watching him play, being like, wow, this is really for adults. Like, this is a grown-up game. All of the characters were motion captured. I'm going to say motion captured. I guess the prop would be digitized.
Yeah.
Right? Photographed doing their little walk and touching your legs. Right. and all the backgrounds were like photorealistic, but we're talking about real low res VGA graphics. So looking back now, it looks like a muddled mess. Yeah. But there's a certain charm to it. So I was playing Countdown, and it was just weird, man, because every so often they'd like throw in a joke, but overall the tone was really serious. Yeah. You're starting off and you're playing, you're locked up in this room, you're in a mental or insane asylum, mental institution, and you have to talk to the guard through the window, and you have to like create a rapport with this person, and then you're sneaking out the window, and you're grabbing like a CPR dummy from another room and like bringing it back, and like it's just all of this real serious stuff. And all of the cutscenes, they used real actors and digitized voices, right? But it was all like, at the time, I'm sure really good, but in retrospect, like laughably bad.
Well, now, was that necessarily... Because there were a few games I ran into the problems with, especially with the audio. There's something about the DOSBox implementation in the browser that the audio gets messed up. Like, one of the things, just for fun, they had the original Tomb Raider in there. It's like, oh, that might be interesting.
I didn't see that.
The video was really choppy, which is to be expected, but the audio was just all garbled and falling apart. even more so than the actual original game. So
Was it understandable? Could you?
No.
Okay, so
No,
this was.
okay.
This was totally understandable. The voices seemed to be in a bit of a higher pitch than they should have been, which I don't know if that was a DOSBox thing, but I kind of think it was intentional.
Okay.
It's supposed to be mad scientist, like
Gotcha.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. I played the game for probably about an hour myself, and then while I was cleaning my apartment today, I watched somebody do a Let's Play on YouTube.
Okay.
And it was probably 22 10-minute episodes. I didn't watch them all.
Yeah.
I skipped through quite a bit, and I will say that although watching it was pretty boring, it's hard with adventure games because you really have to be invested in the story and care about the characters and want to proceed to the next scene to know if it's any good. The humor in the LucasArts games always made me want to progress.
Yeah.
Playing it today, I was like, I don't really care about getting out of this mental institution. I'm wondering if I would care to play it at all any further. And like I said, watching it was kind of tedious.
Yeah.
I will say, I looked it up. Computer Gaming World, their review was about as perfect as it gets.
Ooh.
This is a quote: "Countdown is as close to perfect as any game can be. It also comes closer to earning its self-appointed identification as an interactive movie than any of its predecessors or competitors." So, at the time, highly regarded.
I was going to say, I wonder if they revisit it now, if they'd have the same glowing words.
Right.
Well, one game that actually... So I tried to do a mix of playing games that I played when I was younger and things that I never played.
Nice.
One game that I played an insane amount, and the second I say these words, people are going to say either I have no idea what you're talking about, or oh my god, I need to go play that right now. Scorched Earth.
I need to go play that right now.
Yeah. So did you? Was this okay? Yeah. And I was so happy to find it on this. Like immediately, I dropped everything. That's what I played, and I got to say, for the past 3 days since I discovered this, I've probably played a combined total of like 2 hours of this game with my kids.
Nice.
I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old. They live on mobile games and the Xbox. So I thought there'd be no way they'd be interested in this.
Right.
It's a turn. For those of you who don't know, it's a turn-based. I guess tank strategy game. You pick your angle of your fire, you pick how much force you want to fire with, and you try to shoot other tanks.
Right.
There's multiple weapons. You can get the better you do, the more money you get, so you can buy better weapons like the Funky Bomb. Yes.
Oh yeah.
You can buy defensive weapons, and then if you like the tanks with little text things they say when they fire, from hell's heart I stab at thee, and it shoots.
I forgot about the little text boxes.
Yeah, and you know what? My kids were absolutely into it as soon as we started, and they've been asking me if they could play. Now this is, as simple graphics as you can get. Yep. But man, I can't even tell you how much time I spent.
But even at the time, the graphics were simple.
Oh yeah.
So we weren't playing because the graphics were awesome or anything. Although I do remember, was it like the 50 megaton nuke or something like that?
Yeah.
When it would blow up, it would actually just circle, right? Then it expand. And it was just, and for the time, it was just like this gradiated red, I believe. Yeah. And I was just like, it was simple, but I remember it was very, very satisfying for the time.
And it was massively customizable. I've since found out, I was reading up on it, that the creator, Wendell Hicken, was actually a student. He was actually a college student working on his computer science degree, and he wrote this for fun with his friends.
Nice.
Basically. And one of the things that's being part of that is everything is customizable. You can go in and change the effect of gravity. You can, as you're playing like lightning strikes or meteor strike, or you can cut those out, turn those on.
I remember this.
You can change how the world works. If you shoot, does it wrap around? Does it just disappear? All that's customizable, and even to the point, those text things. Yeah. And this was something I didn't even remember until I read an article. Oh yeah, you can actually go back, and you can't, unfortunately, in this implementation of it, but you could go, the configuration files, the CFG files that they talk from are totally open, and you can just go ahead and write in whatever you want.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a fantastic, and I actually, one thing I definitely want to bring this up, if you've never played this, or even if you have, it was shareware back in the day. I don't think I ever paid a dime for it.
I didn't
back
either.
Then.
Yep. Actually, I feel like we had the full version at some point. We played this game a lot.
We did too. Yeah. And what's really cool is actually on Wendell Hicken's personal website now, he's not really developing it anymore. There was some rumors of maybe like a newer version. And there are some open source and shareware newer versions of this. There's Scorched 3D. He's not associated with it, but it's updated graphics, is 3-dimensional. It looks all right. But if you want to say, hey, thank you, Wendell, for so many hours of entertainment way back in the day, he has a pay what you want download. So you go in, donate whatever you want, and then you get what he calls Scorch 1.5, which is every version of Scorched Earth that he's ever made.
Right on.
And it's as soon as this is over, I'm going to throw him a couple bucks just to say thank you. I may never play it again past the show, but yeah, it's one of the best games I've ever played in my gaming history, and it's back.
And if you've ever played the games, the Worms games, well, but this is the game that those came from.
Absolutely, and he actually, in the interview I read, he makes a good point. This kind of game didn't originate with him, and he certainly wasn't the last word on this kind of game.
Yeah.
But there's just something about this perfect overlay of just some kid who was goofing around, programmed this thing, and we were all the same. We were all in the same headspace as he was back then. So yeah it's fantastic.
Good memories, man. I'm huddled around my the old PC with my brother and my dad, and just
see for us it was hiding all these games in the MS-DOS directory. And the school, when they had switched over to Windows 3.1, so the teacher didn't know where all these games were. She'd looked in Windows and couldn't find it. Right. And of course, we just exit out of the Windows, go to DOS, and boom, yay!
Yeah. So speaking of playing games in school,
yes,
yeah. When you first brought this up, I was like, I'll flip through. Mm-hmm. I'll flip through the catalog a little bit and see if anything jumps out at me. And strangely, what flipped out at me weren't all of the LucasArts games that I love and the Sierra games that I love. Actually, some games that I used to play in the computer lab in my, I want to say middle school.
Okay.
And it was actually, they were educational games. They were made by the Learning Company, so absolutely educational. And they were the Super Solvers video games.
Super Solvers.
Now, I mean, anybody watching this can be like, you're out of your mind. Why are you talking about an educational game? And
because we love it.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I was into some really good games. I feel like I've always had good taste in games. I could always pick out good games from bad games. And when these games showed up in our school library, I was like, gotta give them a shot.
Yeah.
And they were the ones I remember playing. I believe they were Super Solvers Outnumbered, where you go into what I believe is this like a radio station, I think, that's been taken over by machines, and there's a lot of action involved.
Okay.
But then mixed in with the action, like you do some quick simple math equations and problem solving, and it was that one, Midnight Rescue, which was actually like dark and creepy, and then Challenge of the Ancient Empires, which felt like somebody had been playing Super Mario Brothers 3 and said, we need to make this into a learning game.
Wow, see, I haven't heard of any of these.
They're
went to a much better school than I did.
Not really. They're all those three that I just listed. I think those are the cream of the crop. I tried to today try out all of the other ones. I guess the earlier ones must have been Treasure Mountain and Spellbound, because these were like the same characters, but they focused more on like the problem solving and less about like the jump and dodge mechanics of the the platforming element that kids would enjoy. And then I think I hit just the right ones when I was in school. What did I write here? Challenge of the Ancient Empires. Like, you literally switched between three different I guess power-ups. There was a laser beam helmet, a super jump, and a force field. And you just switch between all of them, I think, with the space bar, and you hit enter to use them. But like, you're still using the cursor keys, you're jumping around, and like you're in this platforming section, and you're trying to get from one side of the screen to the other, and you're using all these things, and you gotta switch on the fly, and you do have to you have to have like pretty good reaction times. So I was worried that I was just a kid that enjoyed playing this game at school.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that I would play through probably Midnight Rescue and Outnumbered from start to finish.
Really?
Because today, if I had more time, I would have. Like, that's how much fun I was having. These games have aged extremely well. The character himself, like the main character, he's extremely likable, just in terms of like aesthetic quality. Amazing animation, everything moves fast, still very responsive.
Yep.
It's the perfect balance of just enough educational value with the platforming elements. It's just really well
check
done.
those out.
Yep. And
maybe see if the kids can handle those.
yeah, there was a newer one. I forget what it was called, and you can even tell by just the static screen. And like you could tell they kind of fell off. They were like, let's put the Super Solver spin on this new idea. And I was like, yeah. So Midnight Rescue and Outnumbered are the two that I definitely recommend of the series. The rest you can probably ignore.
So in the theme of educational games, I went and did something similar. Now, I was a huge fan of the TV show Where in the World is Carmen San Diego?
Yeah.
And the band Rockapella. It Rockapella.
Rockapella.
Oh, yeah, if one of them is even watching right now, I would love that song.
I'm going to tell you right now, none of them are watching right now. No.
Then why do we do this?
Who remember the host of the show? What's her name? Did she die recently?
Yes, she did. Well, she was the chief.
The chief. Yeah.
Oh goodness, I can't remember her name, but
where in the world is Carmen San Diego?
She goes from Nashville to. No, we're not singing.
No,
that's all right.
Then we'll have to pay.
Yeah, that's true. Oh yeah. But I only played maybe some of the very, very later versions. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to where it all started. The original Where in the World's Carmen San Diego came out. What year do you think the first Carmen San Diego came out?
So wait, now it really did start with Where in the World?
Yes, Where in the World is Carmen San Diego was the first one.
Okay. Because later there was...
We're in the U.S., we're in Europe, we're in space.
We're in time?
We're in time.
Yep. I'm going to go with 1987.
1985.
No, I was going to say 1986. I would have been 1 year closer.
I was a whopping 8 years old, but this was actually a really enjoyable experience.
Yeah.
It was pretty much like at that point, 1985. It was a glorified text-based game. Really, there were images that would pop up on the screen showing you this is Japan.
Yeah.
But really, your interaction with the game was text-based.
Mm-hmm.
But it was great. One thing I realized was how much harder it was to play games back then, and not just the physically interacting, but the things you had to keep in mind and remember. We're so used to games now, without even realizing it, how much they hold in your hand. I mean, you play Fable, just wait a little bit, and all of a sudden, hey, you're supposed to go this way. You don't have to remember anything anymore because you have these automatic journaling things that you can just go back and journal. We're in the World of Carmen San Diego. They give you the clue, and you better either write it down or remember. Or right. This country has a yellow, orange, and red flag.
Yep.
Well, if you don't know, it's and
you have to do some research to find out.
Yeah, exactly. But I found it really, like you said, charming. I guess is the best way. I was really enjoying it, and it seems so simple. It seems like okay, now, gosh, more than 30 years. Yeah, about 30 years after this game came out, it should be incredibly boring and just. But out of all the games I played, I think I spent the most time playing the first Where in the World of Carmen San Diego.
Wow.
I know it might be laughable, but it was just the right mix of challenging and especially if you're trying to do it from memory and actually doing it for real. If you have a browser open and you're searching for all the clues, you're gonna go through it like that.
Yeah.
Where's the fun? But one thing when I was looking at this, one little interesting bit of trivia. There was, Where in the World's Carmen San Diego was the first. There was a second edition of that. Then there was Where in the USA. There was a second edition of that. And then in 1988, they released Where in Europe is Carmen San Diego, which didn't get a second edition. In fact, they actually stopped the production run in 1990 because the Soviet Union fell.
Oh no!
And
so suddenly the game was inaccurate.
Massively inaccurate. It was changing from week to week. So finally, all right, we just give up, and they stopped for a while until later they did finally put out another edition.
It was made by Broderbund?
Broderbund originally, yes. Yeah.
Originally,
and then it got switched to somebody else, and that was outside of the trivia I was interested in. So I stopped reading.
No, absolutely. So there were certain games from, I'd say, my childhood that I feel like maybe were, and I think this one kind of outclassed me in terms of maybe my interest level,
Okay.
but also maybe my skill level.
Ooh.
This one was Degeneration. D/Generation.
That sounds so familiar.
1991 Mindscape. So it's an isometric game.
Okay.
Plays kind of it's a little bit
Oh, that game.
Yes. See.
Oh, of
now,
course.
It's all coming back to us now. I love games that came out in 1991 that say in the distant future, 2021.
I know.
I was like, that's 5 years away.
Yeah.
That's 5 years away.
We're old.
Yeah, there's no way this is our future.
Yeah.
So you're a courier, and you're sent to deliver a package to the Genok building, I believe, in Tokyo.
Oh, so this is like cyber.
Yeah, a little
cyberpunk.
steampunk, a little a little cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Yep. Once you go inside the building, you find out things in the building have not gone very well. There are people dead.
Yeah, that's usually signs of something not going well.
Yeah. So you basically, in the form of storytelling has actually, I think, been used quite a bit since this game. This can't be the originator of it, but you go to different computer terminals and you kind of like learn the history of this building, and you learn what's been going down, and you find out that again, things are going horribly, and you find like people that are hiding behind their desk and things like that. And you have to clear the room, get rid of any enemies. You have a laser beam that will reflect off of the walls. And in an isometric game, good luck, because you're like, if I shoot that wall, it's going to go where?
Where?
And then you keep shooting the wall, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So my problem with the isometric part of this, you got to save the hostage. I don't think you have to rescue these people. But when you do rescue them, you have conversations with them, and I think they can help you out, kind of tell you where to go.
Okay.
But my problem with the isometric part of this was that I was playing with the D-pad, and I remember playing this game with a directional keys, the keyboard.
Yeah. Right.
Right. That brings to mind the Nintendo controller or something. No, D-pad. But the directional keys, and I remember playing it with directional keys on the PC when I first played this game, but it doesn't make any sense because you run up, down, left, and right, despite the fact that it's an isometric game.
Yeah.
So the only way it makes sense is to play with the full number pad, the full 9 buttons, so you can use the diagonals.
Right, you can do that, yeah.
And I'll tell you, that's not fun at all. So I believe the only way this game would be any fun is if you had a joystick, maybe?
Yeah.
And even then, I was like, this might have been a poor design choice. Let's see, it's action, puzzles, rescue people. There were multiple home conversions, computer terminals. My biggest problem with this is that so I played the first couple floors, I guess.
Okay.
And my biggest problem was I really like the aesthetic. The levels look really nice, but there's like 90 floors of this building. In the 89th floor, looks pretty much the same as the first floor.
Oh.
Even the enemies, like, there's not a lot of variety, and it's just... Yeah. So after, like, 3 or 4 floors of puzzle solving, you're just like, I don't think I care.
Note to developers, more is not better than different.
Right.
Yeah.
So my deal was with that, I was just very recently, like within the last maybe 2 months, the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 got an HD remake of this game. And I was like, man... This is obviously the way to play it. I want to sit home with a real D-pad.
Right.
Analog sticks, and I want to play it. And I looked it up, and oh my god, they got rid of the cool visual style. They almost went for like a sort of photorealistic look, and it looks awful. It's still isometric. It's just it looks there's zero graphical charm in this game. I didn't play it, but here I'll show you a little bit of it here, and it's it's kind of gross looking.
Well, that actually kind of brings up there's something I was going to bring up at the end, but I think it's a good time to bring it up. Sort of a meta point about all these. And I think you hit on it before when you're saying these were visually charming and you talk about the adventure games getting wrapped up. One thing that we don't really... It's harder to do now. Have you ever read Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics?
No.
Okay. Fantastic book. Even if you're not a huge comics fan, it's really important to read this and kind of get some of the things that are happening in comics and visual representation. Okay. One of the things he talks about is, so in Japanese manga, you have very simple faces, but very detailed backgrounds. right? If you, especially if you're looking at like early manga, I mean, incredible, like things like Akira.
Yeah.
You know, the characters' faces design is really simple, but if you look at the weapons they're holding, they're incredibly detailed. And that's not just a weird cultural choice. The idea is the more iconic, the less real something looks, the easier it is for you, the reader, to put yourself in its place. The more realistic the thing looks, the more other it is. You know, if I look at who's a great example of like a very well known, I don't know, my mind just is dropping now. Video game character, super detailed. Solid Snake. How about that? Solid Snake. He's got his very own like identification. It's not. It's hard. It's you can kind of put yourself in his position, but he's his own character. He's not Dezrah. Whereas with a lot of these games where things are so simple, it's actually easier for you to construct that reality around yourself. It's like the difference between reading a book and watching a movie. If you're reading a book, you are engaged in creating that world in your own mind because there are no visuals there.
Right.
With like these simpler, older games, even Scorched Earth, like I think one of the reasons my kids got so involved because they were invested in being that tank and like, oh, you hit me, you shot me. Well, I didn't shoot you. I shot that little pixelated tank, and I didn't shoot you. My little pixelated tank shot your little pixelated tank. But it's so simple that it's very easy to identify with those characters, and I think you get a lot of that, and that's why some of the Degeneration it worked so much with the simpler graphics. Right. But when they tried to make it hyper realistic, you were removed from identifying with the characters, and so therefore all the other flaws became readily apparent.
Yeah. I am Pac-Man.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's another, and with today's hyper-realistic games, it looks cool, but there is something missing that maybe this is just the old guy defending, his old games, but I think there is something to be said for this
back in my day.
We used to put in 5 discs to install a game.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that a little bit recently too. Yeah. I remember when King's Quest V came out. It came with I think 9 3.5-inch HD was it? Did I actually say HD? No. What did it say?
Yeah, high density. High density.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah, because it was 1.4 meg on each desk instead of 720K. Right.
Yep.
9 of those.
I was miming it way too fast.
Oh yeah, God. Well, when I remember bringing that game home, and we only had our hard drive was a 10 megabyte hard drive.
Ooh,
like
fancy.
Well, and we thought we were ahead of the curve on that.
You were.
And I remember upgrading to a 100 meg hard drive and being like, we're never gonna fill this up.
Just to have this conversation, I remember the first time I saw a 1 gigabyte drive, and I was just, that's insane.
Insane. Yeah. The times have changed quite a bit.
Somewhere I've got a 32 megabyte SD card.
Megabyte.
Megabyte. Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Oh yeah.
Huh. I don't know why do you still have that?
For fun.
Okay.
It used to go to my Rio MP3 player.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Which I'm assuming you don't have anymore.
Actually, I do.
Oh my goodness. Do you have another one?
Well, there was kind of a pair of games which I thought made an interesting point. There was one I think I sent you some screenshots of earlier.
Yep.
Called Entity, and one thing you'll see in a lot of these games, there's a lot of that going on.
Mm-hmm.
As well as it's true today as always, sex sells, and a lot of these crappy games put. Okay.
Oh. I'm back.
They would just try to slap someone attractive looking, or just try to. This is the sexy game, the sexy version of this, or what have you. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to just judge it on that. Yeah. I want to actually just maybe, there was a decent game in there. Mm-hmm. No, there was not.
No.
My goodness, no. Hyper detailed for the main character, but the second the gameplay started, it was just like you hit the jump button, you kind of like floated, sort of, and you'd fire, and I don't know.
Is it a platformer? Like
it's a platformer.
Okay.
I mean, arguably, it's really just a run around and try to shoot stuff. But the thing is with platformers, the enemies can't be that difficult to beat,
right?
Because you need to be able to jump and move on. These, you have a very slow firing weapon. Mm-hmm. Like you can't jump on things, you die.
Okay.
But it takes like 5 or 6 shots to kill even the most the smallest enemies. And it was just after about a minute of playing, I'm like, you know what, I went this for the campiness, and it was not worth playing. It makes you realize, and the other game I was about to mention makes the same point. It makes you realize how hard it is to make a good game. Just simply like controlling your character. And, well, I guess maybe not how hard it is, but how easy it is to make a bad one.
Okay.
The other game in this kind of same category was Monty Python's Flying Circus, the game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, see, I think I remember this game.
So this was another one I never played, and I was shocked because I was so that kid that, if it existed, I would have played it. But
yeah.
I guess, I don't know, it missed me. You play as one of the Gumbies, which if you don't know what a Gumby is, well, you're watching the wrong show, I suppose. But look it up. It's not the guy with the horse pokey. Anyways, you're running around, and there's a lot of actually kind of funny gags. Like randomly throughout the game, it'll just say, "Game over." And you're like, oh. And the first time it happened, I'm like, oh man, this is all right. Something went wrong. Maybe I got killed by an enemy I didn't see because the emulator was screwed up. But no, it actually was like just kidding, and started up and continued the game exactly where it left off. That's kind of cute. Your character. So in Super Mario Brothers, I should say this is a platformer also. In Super Mario Brothers, you have your above world, underground, underwater, and you just kind of make that transition. Now Mario's underwater.
Yeah.
Well, in this, your character kind of hops into this room, and very reminiscent of like the animations between skits and Monty Python.
Yeah.
Like his head is taken off and put on a fish's body and jammed it and dropped into the.
Nice.
So that kind of stuff all looks sort of interesting, and it's kind of funny. The music, unfortunately, is just like the first maybe 15 bars of the theme song over and over and over again.
Oh no!
With no connection to what's happening on the screen or anything. It's just that's
a shame.
Yeah, that was pretty grating and should have been a warning sign for pain to come.
Yeah.
Because the other thing, with the Entity game, the jumping was just so bad.
Mm-hmm.
With this, I never even put the thought into how games scroll from side to side as your character moves.
Yeah.
I figured it was just either you're centered, or I don't know. It was something that's worked so often in so many games. I've never seen it broken before, I've never seen it broken this badly.
Did it rubber band?
Well, if rubber banding, so you get near the end and it would kind of reset, but instead of I could see, okay, you walk to the end, reset the whole screen, and walk to the end. That I could sort of understand, because you get your your original Double Dragon games like that, that sort of do that thing. This is, you would get within a fraction of it, they would move just a fraction, and they move. It was the weirdest thing.
That's really strange.
It's very hard to describe. If we do pull up some video for it,
I hope I can find some.
Yeah, it's so jarring when you play it, though.
It's just like a choppy scroll, right?
Yeah, well, it's not. I don't. The words, they should have set to poet. Choppy would be one way of putting it. Insanely maddening would be another.
Okay. I
made it through 5 screens, and I was like, this, the writing wasn't bad. The gags were okay, this is, when it come out, 1990. It was a 1990, that you can't cram a whole lot of information and a whole lot of stuff into a game like that. But, the feel of Monty Python-esque humor was there. But, oh my God, it was so
technologically broken.
Yeah, just. But it was just with those two games, it made me realize wow, it may not be that hard to make a good game, but it's really easy to make a bad one.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm assuming that the number of good games, the ratio of good games to bad games, probably hasn't changed much over the years.
Oh yeah, and to be fair, I mean, we said there's over 2,000 games. 90% of it is shovelware.
Yep.
It's just absolute garbage. I mean, but that's Sturgeon's law. 80% of everything is crap. Yeah, he's a science fiction author. Sturgeon's law. 80% of everything is crap, even when you take into account Sturgeon's law.
Right. Does that apply to our viewers as well?
You know who you are. No, our viewers are 100% awesome all the times.
100%.
Yeah. We're talking about things that are created. Yeah. Well, I guess that people were created by your parents.
Yeah, awesome. We're gonna go with 80%.
80%.
It took me a while to look this game up.
Okay.
Or I should say, I started looking it up, and it took me a while to find my answer. There was a game that I used to play on the PC, and it was very Galaga-like, I guess.
Okay.
You had a ship at the bottom of the screen, and it was mouse controlled, and there was wave after wave after wave of enemies.
I'll play that game.
It was a space shooter, shmup as they call them now. But after I want to say 10 different websites, I finally found the name of it, and it's called Galactics.
Galactics.
Yep. 1992 by Cygnus Multimedia Production.
Okay.
All right. And I remember just being like an early VGA game. I was like very impressed by it. It took some skill, I'd say. I remember my brother and I being addicted to it for a while, at least maybe like a month. And I remember coming home from school one day, and he was like up to like some wave that I'd never even seen before. I was like, oh my god, it's crazy. So this game is on the list, and I was very happy to find it.
Okay.
You have a normal shot, normal fire. You got missiles, bombs. You even have, when you destroy enemies, some of them like leave power-ups behind.
Okay.
But you can't move around the screen like you can on a normal shmup.
Oh.
You can only move left and right on the bottom of the screen. It's mouse controlled.
Okay.
Okay. So what you have instead is a claw. A retractable claw. So you shoot out the claw and you go and try to grab the power-ups and bring them back, because you grab only the ones you want.
Okay.
So add a little bit of level of skill to the whole game. It's not just hold down the fire button. Unfortunately, I ran into a technical problem with this. In the browser, it wouldn't recognize my mouse. So I tried to play with the keyboard.
Did you double-click in the open space? Because sometimes, like, if you had a mouse-based game, like a lot of the games I played were, like, you're going around with the mouse on the screen. Make sure you get your actual mouse onto like the gameplay area and like double-click, and a little window will pop up and say, "Hit escape to get your mouse back," and then the emulator takes it as the mouse. The
I'm
emulator.
Pretty sure I tried everything,
Okay.
and I want to say there was a comment somewhere that said DOSBox wouldn't recognize the mouse for somebody else too. So I think this might be a pretty common issue.
Yeah.
I hope it's not. Maybe I can go back and try it again tonight and it'll work great.
I want to put a pin in that. Normally, the internet rule is do not read the comments. For this, if you're using the Internet Archive, definitely read the comments, because I found that very helpful. There are a lot of people who say,
Right on.
I had this issue, it didn't load for me. So it definitely will help you narrow down, is it just my system, or is this good?
Luckily, Internet Archive is not the only place where you can play this game.
Oh, okay.
So because I tried to play this game, and for some reason, instead of using the D-pad, the directional buttons, directional keys on the keyboard, got it.
It's okay. We can call it D-pad. That's fine.
I don't like it. Instead of that, it was like Alt and Control would move your ship left and right,
Okay.
and that's not intuitive, I'll tell you. And then every so often, the Alt, only on occasion, would bring up a menu,
Oh.
like in the window. And I was like,
inconsistent control schemes is not a good thing.
really messy.
Yeah.
But I did find a different website that allowed me to play it with a mouse, and I love this game.
Oh, really?
I am a huge fan.
Nice.
It aged very well. Immediately, very addictive all over again. You die on the third stage, and you're like, I can make it further than that, right? So this one comes highly recommended if you can find a place to play it with mouse support. The funny thing is your ship doesn't move immediately with the motion of your mouse. There's almost like an Arkanoid like paddle at the bottom of the screen.
Okay.
That is representative of your mouse movement. Like it's 1-to-1 with your mouse,
Right.
and then your ship is like
It's kind of drags behind.
a little behind, and
Interesting.
Yeah, so again, an extra level of strategy mixed in there. It's very, very good game, and I want to say maybe this was shareware as well when it came out, but some good quality for the time.
Nice. Well, I've got one last game.
All right, I think that would be a good place to end it.
One last game for me, and this was kind of interesting. This sort of comes with a story behind it. My best friend in high school, still to this day, is a guy named Mike Baker. Hi, Mike. And when we graduated, he went to Nichols College.
Okay.
And Nichols at the time, they had this, cool deal where I forget how much it was, but for like only a little bit more, they would give you a free laptop with your tuition. Well, free laptop with tuition, whatever.
Sure.
And so he got this Dell laptop, and here's what makes it really interesting, because a lot of colleges do that. I just remember this was so back in the day that it was black and white.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You know what? black and white or like a monochrome monitor?
Well, mono, yeah.
Okay, just making sure I'm following.
But it was still like it was an LCD screen.
Wow.
It was a laptop. I mean, if you looked at it today, you'd say, "Oh, yeah, that's a laptop."
Yeah.
And so I remember it for that. I also remember it came with a game, SimAnt.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh god, I remember this game.
And I just always remember that sounds like an interesting idea, but I never actually got to play it.
Yep.
And I was just it was always something that stuck in the back of my mind. That's kind of like a neat idea. Well, they have it here, fully functioning, and I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really did. There was something, I don't know, something about the strategy of it. It did remind me of something though. I'm kind of a little bit of a board game geek on the side, and with the really complicated board games, almost universally, like it comes with this huge instructions, and you think this is incredibly dense to understand, and it's so hard to get through these instructions. But once you start playing it, it's like, oh, okay, this starts to make sense.
Yeah.
Going through the tutorial in SimAnt, I'm like, oh my god, what am I doing?
It felt like that.
It was that exact same feeling. Like, oh, this is just too much being thrown at me. Again, this is my 21st century gaming brain who is used to everything being spoon fed,
right?
Trying to figure out a late 20th century game where figure it out, sucker. But again, once I started playing it, was like, oh, this actually makes sense. Now I didn't spend as much time with this as I wanted to, but that's the important thing. I want to spend more time with this
nice.
game. It was fun. It was you control your end and you got to get food and set up defenses against. Yeah. It's a mix. Like today we say tower defense and resource control and real time strategy. But it was a really interesting idea.
It had a mix of all of those elements.
Yeah. And what one of my favorite parts was you've got this kind of map of like the backyard.
Okay.
And like this is the square you control.
I totally remember this.
Yeah, you have to slowly control more and more squares until eventually you get into the house, and then start taking control of areas of the house.
That's
and
great.
It's just like that's neat, and you could just watch like the different squares light up as your colony expands and takes over. So. There's out of everything I played, Scorched Earth. Well, I had a lot of fun with that. I'll probably revisit it now and then for nostalgia's sake.
Yeah.
But two games that I'll actually go back to play for real for myself because I want to beat them. Return to Zork and SimAnt. I will. Yeah. Thank you so much, Internet Archive.
Yeah, seriously. This is a great trip down memory lane. And SimAnt, I remember not liking, but I was so young. It was probably just a little too robust for me.
It's pretty complicated.
Because I was used to, for the Sim games at the time, I was really into SimCity. Mm-hmm. And then I think as soon as they started expanding further into that, like SimCity 2000 and Sim Earth, and it was just a little too much. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I remember the little squares in the backyard, and I think I'd like to try to give that a shot these days and see if it's more up my alley.
The only downside is with all these games, if you're playing them here, you pretty much need to plan out how much you want to be playing because you can save within that gaming session.
Yeah.
But once you exit out your browser or once you even hit backspace, it's gone.
So when I went into the Super Solvers game, I did Midnight Rescue. I did that one twice, and when I went back to it, it said, "Are you a new player or are you Brian Paul?" And I was like, how is this possible? Is it recognizing like my IP address? I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
Or maybe my browser had maybe I just had the same browser open or something. But for whatever reason, that one recognized that I had played that game moments earlier.
Backed out of it and then gone.
I don't know if I'd backed out of it or if I'd opened a new browser or what happened. But I was a little surprised to see my name there again.
Huh.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Curious to know how that happened.
But
mystery unsolved.
So overall, I would highly recommend going back and as Brian said, the Internet Archive is not the only place you can go play these old games. There's a bunch. I think abandonware.org is another place, and sometimes it's a little more complicated to play in the browser. You've got to download DOSBox and install it on your own machine or run some other kind of emulator. But it's absolutely worth going back and for those of us who are old folks, revisiting memory lane, but for you new folks, go back and understand the history, understand where these games you love came from, and if you're hoping to be a game designer someday, you can really go back and see how they solved these problems in the past, control schemes, because this wasn't, these gaming didn't always exist. A lot of these things that are failures, we're calling them failures now, were experiments.
Right, very true, very true. Yeah, great trip down memory lane. I'm really glad we did this. I have a feeling this will not be the last time we talk about DOS games that we're we fondly remember or that we just recently discovered. It's whenever people talk about PC games, they're always like Steam. And when you said DOS, I was like, it was just like a wave of memories. So we'll be doing this again. There'll be a part 2 some point in the future. If you have any DOS games that you remember fondly, or any ones that you're curious about that you've heard of, and you'd like us to elaborate more on, leave that comment down below, and we'll definitely check it out.
If you don't know what DOS is, that's okay. Leave a comment, we'll explain it.
No, we won't. It's a disk operating system. Get over it. For Gaming Without Parole, I'm Brian Paul.
And I'm a significantly more patient Dezrah.
See you next week.